Hi, I'm Lynette and welcome. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite eyeshadow palette from all of the brands. Well, not all of the brands, but most of the brands that I own. I've seen a couple of people do this. I haven't actually watched any of the videos, but I know that other people have done something similar, so I decided that I would do it today. Now, I'm not going to include all the brands because, you know, I only have one palette from the brand. You know, I didn't include those. If you're interested in seeing what my favorite palettes are from the brands that I own, then keep on watching. Okay, I'm not gonna do this in any particular order, so let's get started. I've got this big old basket here with all my palettes in them. So I'm gonna start off with Natasha Denona because I only own two palettes from Natasha Denona, both of which were purchased at the end of last year. So I have the Glam palette and I have the Mini Gold palette, and I'm gonna say the Mini Gold palette is my favorite. Of course, I just love this. The color story for this one because it's green. And yeah, I've used both palettes. I did 3 looks with the Glam palette and I've done 1 look with this one that I think I filmed. I'm pretty sure I filmed it, yes. And I just really love the look that I did with this palette. And these shimmers are just so pretty. I think this one here, this green one here, I think is a duochrome. Or if it's not, it's got, yeah, it's kind of duochromish. It's got like some golds in it and it's just really beautiful. So the green palette takes the win on this one. Next up is Colored Raine. Now I have maybe 3 palettes from Colored Raine, and I think they're most known for, in terms of their eyeshadow palettes, I think they're most known for their Queen of Hearts palette, which I do have and is a beautiful palette. Actually, it was my first palette from Colored Raine. But the one that I'm going to choose is one that I think is really underrated and overlooked. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's available any longer, but it's the Beauty Rust palette. It was one of the mini palettes that Colored Raine offered, and this palette is just so, it's so pretty. It's warm, it's rusty, and this shimmer shade right here is just, ugh, it's this duochrome orangey gold and sparkly, and when you wet this shade and you put it on the lid, hallelujah, you are saying something. And then this red, this like brick red shade right here, so gorgeous. So every time I use this palette, I end up, look at that, I end up doing the same look. Putting this shadow on the outer corners and smoking it out and into the crease, and then this on the lid, because, you know, that's another thing that I like so much about this palette, is that it's just really easy. I just pick it up and go. You know, Colored Raine's eyeshadow formula is really great, and yeah, easy to do. Don't have to think about it. I can just get it and go. So really enjoy this palette. Even though it's an old one, I still use it, and this one would be my favorite from Colored Raine. Makeup Forever. Does anyone remember when Makeup Forever did eyeshadow palettes? Because I have forgotten. I was rumbling through my collection the other day and I'm like, wow, I forgot that Makeup Forever had eyeshadow palettes. They didn't have that many, and the one that would be my favorite is the Palette 9 Artist Shadow. It doesn't have a name. I have 2 of them, but this one is the more cool tone neutral palette, and look at that, really pretty. And again, just a simple, like, you can do some everyday understated looks with this, some smoky looks. I love Makeup Forever's matte formula. Their shimmer formula, not crazy about, but if I had to pick one palette from Makeup Forever that would be my favorite, it would be this one. All right, Lorac. Remember Lorac? They've started putting out, I think they've always put out eyeshadow palettes, but I don't know, they just haven't been very interesting. And more recently they've put out some more that I think have gotten a little more interest. One that I really do enjoy and is definitely my favorite, it would be their Unzipped palette. They did do another one, a sequel to this, called the Unzipped Gold, but the original one is the one that I prefer. And as you can see, she is much loved. I remember when I first got this palette and I could not put it down. It is cool tone, mauve shades, and it's just really beautiful. The Lorac eyeshadow formula is so gorgeous. Very underrated, doesn't get any kind of kudos here on YouTube, but their formula is really pretty. The mattes are pigmented and blend really easily, and then the shimmers are just so pretty, soft, and just really smooth, really nice. So this is an old favorite, but will always be a favorite. Urban Decay. I have a few palettes from Urban Decay. They were one of the first brands when I first got into eyeshadow that I purchased from, the Vice palettes. Remember those? And I remember because I was new to eyeshadow and they were all the rage, and I was like, oh my god, that's so excited. And over the years, they used to be really edgy. They were what Mel Cosmetics is today, in my opinion. Urban Decay, I mean, just the name of the brand, okay? And they lived up to the name because they used to be really edgy. They were doing things that other people weren't doing. They weren't mainstream. They weren't putting out a lot of mainstream palettes. They had color. They had a lot of metallics. Like, they used to do the damn thing. And I'm really hoping that they will get it together and get back to that, because I remember Urban Decay used to spark so much excitement, not just with me, but I think in just the broader beauty community, anytime they dropped a launch. So it was difficult to come up with a favorite palette from them, but I think I'm going to go with, this might be surprising to a lot of people, I'm going to say the Urban Decay collab that they did with Kristen Leanne. I believe she's a beauty influencer. I don't know who she is, but liked the look of this palette. I mean, from the packaging, Urban Decay, Urban Decay always hits a home run with their packaging, but this palette no one seemed to like because everyone seemed to be so caught up in the packaging and the wasted space and the odd placement of the shadows and the different shapes, and this palette got a lot of hate, unfortunately, for the looks, because the quality is really good, except for this shade right here, this green one, not so great. But these blues, the blues, and oh, and this pink one, but these blues and the purple, oh my gosh, so beautiful. And then this one here, these two in the split pan are dual chromes, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And then Urban Decay makes one of the blackest black eyeshadows on the market. You got a free double-sided brush. I mean, there was a lot to not like, I guess, about this palette, but for me, there was a lot to like. And so surprisingly, it is going to be my favorite palette from the brand. Now, Juvia's Place is one of my favorite brands when it comes to eyeshadow palettes. I own quite a few of them, and I don't see that ever changing. Although they've become the new ColourPop, and they need to really just sit back and relax for a minute, take a breath, and gather themselves, because the amount of releases, eyeshadow palette releases they've been doing has really been like, it's been too much. It's too much. But I love their formula. Love their shimmer metallic formula, one of my favorites, and their packaging and just everything about Juvia's Place brand. I really love. But with all the palettes that I own from them, and all of which I really love, it was still easy for me to pick my favorite. If you follow me here, you already know what it is. It is the Tribe palette. Sadly, this palette has been discontinued. I still don't know why they would do that. But yeah, this is just... You have this dirty, grungy, green, brown shadow, and then this gold, which is so gorgeous. This shadow right here, which has a green flip to it, this metallic, which is so beautiful. This, I mean, just all of them. I just love the color story of this palette. I love that it's a green palette, but when you look at it, you don't immediately think so until you start to swatching and using it, and you're like, oh wow, like just about all of them, you know, not the orange shades of course, but but all the other shadows have some hint or some green in them, and it's a nice little surprise. And I love it. You can you can do so much drama. You can get so dramatic with this palette, or simple, and I really love it. The packaging, everything. Still one of my favorites from the brand. Now, Viseart. Viseart is a brand that I've always loved since I first got into eyeshadow. I have loved Viseart. They are quite pricey, but I feel like for the price they charge, folks, the quality is worth it. It is there. I never feel like I've been ripped off when I purchase a palette from, or any shadows from Viseart. And last year, I really started getting more and more into Viseart. They, for the longest, I mean, their palettes are primarily for professionals. Their 12 pan pro palettes are for professionals. Their brand, I think, is primarily for professionals, but in the last few years they have really started to make eyeshadow palettes for your everyday consumer, for your amateur eyeshadow makeup lover, for the woman going to work, just for the non-pros, for us. They started making palettes and marketing them towards us, and last year I really started getting it more into them because I tried their the shimmer metallic formula, and it just blew me away. I was gonna say absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And I love every palette that I own from them. The Grand Pro 2 and 3, the all matte one, the all metallic shimmer one. Oh my gosh, that dark edit palette, one of my favorites. So many. I love them all. I love them all. But with that said, and with how much I love those palettes, especially the dark edit, for me, I think my favorite palette from them is still the second palette I ever purchased from them, and it is the Editorial Brights palette. And this palette doesn't get a lot of shine. And I know it's an old palette, but this is probably, of all the rainbow palettes I have, this is the best one. I mean, in terms of, it's an all matte palette. Their matte formula is unrivaled. They blend beautifully, but more importantly, the colors stay true to color. And I just still remember the first time I ever used this palette, and I used the green, and I was shocked. That lime green looks just as it does on my skin without a white base as it does in the pan. And that to me was just like mind-blowing. And yeah, I just love it. So pigmented, but so easy to use. And yeah, I love this palette. Again, it doesn't get a lot of talk. It doesn't get talked about ever, but it's a really great rainbow eyeshadow palette. Now for Anastasia Beverly Hills, I don't have a lot from Anastasia Beverly Hills. The very first palette I ever purchased from her was the Mario palette, and then I have a couple more. I never got really into, like, I never picked up Modern Renaissance. Like, I never really was into ABH, to be honest with you, and still not. To be honest, just like a lot of their palettes, I don't know, I guess because traditionally, at least until Norvina got in the mix and started changing things up, going in a different direction, they were really, you know, marketed towards like everyday makeup, neutral eyeshadow palettes, soft, subtle palette, color stories, which is fine. And, you know, I did a lot of, when first getting started, I did a lot of neutral eye looks, but I don't know, they never really appealed to me. But, you know, once they did the Riviera palette, they started doing a little more color. I was like, okay. So I always look out for when they drop something because, you know, I'm always interested to see what they do. But very rarely do I ever buy anything. But my favorite palette that I did purchase from ABH will be of no surprise to anyone. It is the Jackie Aina collab that they did. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, like for me this is the best color story that they've ever offered. I love that every shadow shows up on my skin tone, that I can use every single shade in this shadow in this palette and not worry about it not showing up on me. It's pigmented, they're easy to blend. You know, the formula is powdery because that's just how the ABH formula is, but yeah, I mean, they're just really easy shadows to work with, and at least this palette is. And yeah, so definitely my favorite from them thus far. Ace Beaute. I really do enjoy Ace Beaute. I have, I want to say, well now I think 6 palettes from them. I just picked up the Scarlet Dusk palette. That is the palette I am wearing on my eyes today. And yeah, I know that they get mixed reviews, and I understand why, because I think their matte formula, I think a lot of them are pressed pigments. They're very, very pigmented, can be difficult to blend, can cause patchiness, but for the most part, I really have had few problems with their formula. This palette actually did give me some problems today. The shimmer eyeshadow formula, you know, isn't always easy to pick up on the brush. I will say that. So yeah, I mean, it's not a formula for everyone, but I don't mind working with it, and I have found that I haven't really had to work really hard when using their shadows, so I love it. My favorite palette from them, again, if you follow me here, this will be of no surprise. It is the Oceanic palette and has been for a very long time. To me, this is like the quintessential blue-green palette. Like it just has everything, and if you're into more grungy color story, this is it. And I just love everything about it. I love the blues, I love the greens, these dirty grungy greens, like these bright colors that it's just beautiful. It's still my favorite. Pat McGrath, this will come of no surprise. I mean, I got a lot of Pat McGrath palettes, her quads, her 6-pan minis, her full-size mothership palettes. This will be of no surprise if you follow me, you know it. My favorite palette from her is the Divine Rose 2 Mothership 8 palette, and I just, you know, this palette for me is a full, like, one-stop shop palette. It's fairly monochromatic, you know, you're gonna, for the most part, you're gonna get a pink look, okay? But I can do when I use this palette, this is what I tend to do. I'll use it, I'll do my eyeshadow with it, and then I'll grab one of these shades and do for my blush, and then one of the shimmers for my highlight, and then boom, I'm done. So for me, it's not just an eyeshadow palette, it's also a face palette, and I use it in that way. And yeah, love, love, love it. My favorite. Too Faced. It's been a while since I've purchased any palettes from, no, that's not true. Last year I did purchase some palettes from Too Faced. I got the Papaya palette, which I absolutely love. And then 2019 I got a few palettes from them, a couple palettes from them. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, their formula is nice. I'm not crazy about the brand owner. And a lot that they come out with I'm not even interested in. The color stories all look the same, and you know, so a lot of it I just pass up. But of the palettes that I do have, my favorite one, which again I think is underrated, is the Life's a Festival palette. The packaging, you know, that's one of the things I don't like about the Too Faced brand, is this juvenile packaging. Like, I am not a teenager, I'm a grown woman. Why? Just why? But if you can get past that, and thankfully I was able to, this is a gorgeous palette. It is chock full of duochromes. Yes, it's primarily a shimmer palette for sure. So this for me is an accent palette. I'm going to use it in conjunction with another palette, particularly because it doesn't have any real mattes that I can use to deepen up my outer corner. It doesn't really have much in the way of crease shades for me. So I have to use another palette for the mattes, but for the shimmers, just pop on one of these duochromes here and you are good to go. And I am surprised, really surprised at how much I like this palette. I lusted after it for so long, and I'm so glad I finally went on ahead and got it before it was discontinued, and got it at a discount because I got it at Nordstrom Rack. But yeah, this was a great one. So definitely my all-time favorite from them. Beauty Bay is a brand that I just recently got into at the end of last year, and they have their own By Beauty Bay brand. And they make some very, very affordable eyeshadow palettes and very pretty. So I got several at the end of last year. And the palette I'm going to mention I've only used once, but this is the Book of Magic. It's the Book of Magic palette. I've only used it once, but I think this would be, I could consider this a favorite. The color story here is just so beautiful, and the shimmers are just so gorgeous. And you have your neutrals, you have your blues, you have your purples, you have a black. I mean, I know I've only used it once, but I'm claiming it as my favorite. Now that might change. That might change once I start using all the other. I've used all of the ones that I have by them. One time, I've used them all. So yes, I can say this one is my favorite. Damn it, shoot. Kat Von D, back in the day, I was all about some Kat Von D before I knew who she is. So prior to that, I did enjoy her eyeshadow palettes. I enjoyed the formula. I loved the packaging. And so I have quite a few palettes from that brand. And it was easy though, with all the palettes that I like. And I like them all. It was easy for me to pick my favorite. And it is the Saint Sinner palette. Just the packaging, look at this. I know this rubs some people the wrong way because, you know, it has a sinner side, it has a saint side, and some people, you know, didn't care for that, but that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. The names don't bother me. It is the color story that I'm looking at, and it is sort of kind of all over the place. But there are some beautiful shadows in this. I remember when I first bought this palette and I just could not put it down. It's so beautiful. I have used it more recently and it's still beautiful. I'm just gonna swatch some of these shadows for you to show you what I mean. Like, it's just really, really nice. And it's got neutral mattes that I can use on the outer V, that I can use in the crease. It has some beautiful metallics. It has topper shades. It's got a lot. There's a lot going on with this palette. There's a lot going on. But I really, 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 really liked it. So wanted to mention this one for sure. And then from Give Me Glow, not sure how I feel about that brand anymore, but I do have multiple palettes from them because I do really enjoy their formula for the most part. And of the palettes that I have, the Juicy Olive palette is my favorite, just in terms of the color story. It's just really, I mean, it's a monochromatic green eyeshadow palette, right? So the color story is very cohesive. And I just love green eyeshadow. And you have these beautiful shimmers and you have these really nice greens. And yeah, this is another like one and done palette. Can grab it and just do a whole look with it and then just keep it moving. So my favorite from that brand. And from ColourPop, I have a fair amount of ColourPop palettes. To this day, I still really love their eyeshadow formula. They're doing the most. They just launched too much stuff to where everything to me has started to look the same. All the color stories all look the same. So I haven't really supported them as much in the later years as much as I did, you know, early on. But yes, I really enjoy all the palettes that I have from them. And this was difficult because I do have the Child palette and I love that palette. Another monochromatic green, for the most part, monochromatic green palette, and you know, it's got my little Grogu on it, so love that. But the reason I chose this palette is because it's a little more versatile. It is the Good Sport palette, another palette that's been discontinued, and I don't know why. But look at that, look at the packaging. I do have 2 videos of tutorials that I've done with this palette, and I just think the color story is just really beautiful, and it's versatile, right? So like you can do your warm, it's got your warm shades here, you can do your warm neutral look, but then it's got these cool greens and this gold, and you can do a nice cool green look. So you can do it all with this palette. And then you have this shimmer right here, which is a dual chrome. It has a lot of glitter. It's just really different. That one right here, it's just so different. It's got some blue flecks in it. It's like, it's got a lot going on. Really different. And yeah, I think ColourPop hit it out the park with this palette. So why they would discontinue it, I don't know. They seem to like to do that, discontinue. They're good. They're really good ones. But yeah, I'm so glad I got my hands on it. I do hope that they will bring it back because a lot of people seem like a lot of people missed out on it, and a lot of people, it seems, would purchase it if they were to re-release it. So here's to hoping that they do, but definitely my favorite one from ColourPop. And I was gonna say last but not least, we got 2 more left. Mel Cosmetics. I went on a little roll there with them at the end of last year. They have some beautiful color stories. The formula isn't always the easiest to work with. Of all the palettes that I have from them, and I have quite a few now, the She's and Parties palette is my favorite. Another monochromatic palette. This time it's purple and plum, and this formula is the best of all the ones that I own from them. The mattes are just as pigmented as always, but for some reason they're easy to blend. I didn't have any issues. I've used this palette a couple of times now and did not have an issue either time with it. So really happy with this palette. Don't know what they did with this formula, but I hope going forward they will continue to do so. And then last, finally, I have 2 palettes from BPerfect Cosmetics. They have 3 Carnival palettes and I purchased the last 2, but my favorite of the 2 would have to be the XL palette because this was the first one I picked up from them, and I just fell in love because the formula is just, it's just really good. This palette has 3 highlighters. They didn't do that for the Carnival palette this time, which I think is fine. I've never used the highlighters. I could, they're nice. I could actually use 2 of them. Okay, maybe 1 of them. But yeah, I don't use them. I'm just all about the eyeshadows, and I picked this one because for me, they're both versatile, but I don't know, for me this one is just more versatile of the 2. because you have just like everything that's in that palette, but more so that the Carnival 3 is a little more heavy with the purples and the pinks, and this one you just really have just you got a plethora of everything. You got a little green, you got a little of orange, you got this, you got that, you've got just everything you need, I think, to make an eyeshadow look. I've done several looks with this palette. I think I may have done 2 on my channel, and I've done neutral looks, I've done colorful looks. You can just do it all. You really can. I love it. The mattes are pigmented and they blend very well, and the shimmers are really beautiful, and it's so easy to work with. These shadows are just really easy to work with, and I love them. I love this palette so very much. So my favorite from BPerfect. And please let me know down below in the comments, what are your favorite palettes from some of your favorite brands? If you liked this video, then please give it a like and consider subscribing, because I do makeup related content, hauls, swatches, reviews, and tutorials every Saturday. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again next week. Until then, bye-bye.